Welcome back to the Detroit Is This podcast, brought to you by Detroitisit. We're Detroit's storytelling platform that's all about believing that media has a mission, and ours is to tell the story of the community, citizens, and the exciting innovations of Greater Detroit. On this podcast, we talk with thought leaders who share their perspectives on the place, business, culture, and innovation have on living in a city. Like, comment, share, and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter across all social channels and at DetroitIsit.com. We'd love to hear from you. Today's podcast is brought to you by Gilbert Family Foundation. Learn more about their work at gilbertfamilyfoundation.org.
So welcome back to Detroitisit's podcast by the name of Detroit Is This. We're focused on a lot of things Detroit, so community, business, innovation, civics, culture, lifestyle, and sustainability and the built environment. We're going to be hosting an event on November the 6th called Sustainable Urban Design Summit at New Lab Detroit, which we welcome everybody to. We will give you the link in the show notes below. Once we're done, you can click on that and please attend. And part of these conversations are interviews with some of the great people and partners that are part of SUDS. So today we're going to have a really, really great conversation with somebody that I think you're really going to enjoy. And I'll tell you who he is in a minute. I am Ivana Kalafatic. I am the founder of Detroitisit. And you can also check us out across all social media platforms, DetroitisIt.com. And so I wanted to kind of let you know that the way that we're looking at SUDS and the way that we're looking at these conversations with all the incredible folks and thought leaders that we have both on Detroit Is This, the podcast, and at SUDS, they're really conversations. So they're not meant to be strict Q&A. They're really meant to be back and forth between interesting people doing interesting things within the topics of sustainable urban design, mobility, and housing and neighborhood development. So today, we'd like to welcome to the podcast a Detroit native, which we're proud of, Darnell Adams. He's the Vice President of Detroit Community Initiatives for Gilbert Family Foundation. He's got a degree in Urban and Regional Planning from MSU, my alma mater, Michigan State University. And for more than a decade, he's been striving to build and adjust resources in a way that improves access to opportunities for Detroiters. So we love how that sounds, and there's a lot of opportunity for discussion around community in that tone. Prior to joining Gilbert Family Foundation, Darnell served as Vice President of Neighborhoods at Invest Detroit, another great organization within Detroit, where he led equitable investments in the city's Strategic Neighborhoods Fund and districts with a special focus on supporting BIPOC developers in particular. And that's actually an important point of entry to some of the topics that we're going to be covering at SUDS on November the 6th. So I'm really excited to get into that as well with Darnell today. And before Invest Detroit, he was serving as a director of inventory for the Detroit Land Bank Authority, where he oversaw strategic disposition of 94,000 publicly owned parcels. So for those of you that are from Detroit, you will know most of those organizations. For those of you that are listening outside of Detroit, these are all pretty substantial and long-term organizations that have been both funding opportunities within Detroit, but also have been part of the evolution of the city in a really big way. So to have Darnell on the podcast with us today is a real treat, and I wanted to welcome you. So hi, Darnell.
Well, hello, and thank you for that very warm introduction. I need to call you anytime I need an intro. Thank you. I really appreciated that.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation on what Gilbert Family Foundation does for those that don't know, and for those that do know, to get into a little bit more of the weeds on the organization. And I just want to also make sure that I preface Gilbert Family Foundation is a sponsor of SUDS, Sustainable Urban Design Summit, which we are thrilled about. So You are here also as a representative of the mission and the vision of the organization, which we're thrilled for. So why don't we get into the conversation today? So setting the stage, what are we looking at as what's the opportunity for Detroit? So for example, when we look at Detroit being a center of major urban reinvention over the past decade, why is sustainability such an important focus for the city right now? What do you think when you think of reinvention within Detroit and sustainability efforts as a
Yeah,
whole?
yeah, that's a great question because I think Detroit used to be a very big populated city, and we have seen a lot of population loss, and we've also seen a lot of demolition over the last decade. I mean, I want to say somewhere around maybe 60,000 parcels demolished just in the last decade. And prior to that, many more thousands. And our landscape is different now. We have an opportunity to rebuild differently. We have an opportunity to, um, con contribute to an infrastructure for a future that we know will need to be a lot more climate resilient. Um, and then and there's just a lot of opportunity to also reestablish what was lost. I mean, Detroit had one of the richest tree canopies, as an example,
Mm.
in its history. And, through riots, through disease, we lost a lot of our canopy. And that has created a lot of hot communities, or like, in a way that can be disruptive to home repairs, that can be disruptive to health. Um, I think Detroit is also well positioned because we have infused this sort of tech component. Not sort of, it is like Detroit is a tech city in many ways. And that gives us space to reimagine mobility across our city. And uh, it's funny sometimes, but people will ask, well, Detroit's a major city, but it has no transit. And, when are you going to build a subway, or when are you going to build trains down each road? And it's like, well, the future is bright, and we don't necessarily have to infuse billions and billions of dollars to build an infrastructure to manage mass transportation. The opportunity for Detroit is that we could do anything more uniquely, like different, to accommodate such needs. So for me, I think when I think about sustainability for Detroit, the opportunity is like, how do we better utilize the land that we have in front of us? How do we build smarter and better for the future? And how do we use what we're doing here in Detroit as a model to signal to other cities who, frankly, are going to need these same types of tactics to sustain themselves?
So when you use the words like climate resilience
Hmm.
for a city, and again, for those of us that aren't familiar with, let's say thinking sustainably with urbanization of a city and the future urbanization of a city, um, what do you think, what do you think changed that all of a sudden people are referencing and thinking through these challenges? Do you think it's kind of the chicken or the egg question? Did culture and society hit a threshold and we are looking for opportunities for solutions? Or is it because the opportunities around tech and sort of globalization of thought processes came in, and then we started thinking, wait a minute, there's all these communities where we maybe don't have access to the best air conditioning, to the best, green spaces, and then you start tying that into economic challenges within some of these communities. So,
Yeah,
what's your take on that challenging? It's a huge question, which I'm
I,
sure neither of us have an answer to, but I'm so curious to see what your thoughts are.
I think it's a little bit of both. And like the climate issue it's not unique or not new, right? Like this has been an issue that Detroiters have dealt with for many years. I mean, as recent as the 2021 floods, right? I mean, I was a victim of the floods
Mm,
twice in one summer where I watched my entire basement flood with 3 feet of water. I have
mm.
friends who, their basements flooded to the first floor of their homes. Um, we have continued to watch these, what I would call like once in 500-year floods happen in our city several times in the last decade. And prior to that, I mean, I think we've had a lot of, there's been a tremendous need for resilience hubs for neighborhoods where people don't have access to air conditioning or to heat, and that those spaces needed to exist. And so there's been a lot of trust built in partnership with nonprofits. Nonprofits really are that lifeline in communities that residents work with them directly for services, for support. And then that coupled with the future of like tech and where we are, I've seen relationships built, right? Like when I think about the east side of the city, you have organizations like Eastside Community Network who are working with tech companies like Just Air to monitor the health of the air in their communities and hold corporations and municipalities accountable to do the right thing. Um, and so for me, it's we're watching sort of this marriage of both community voice and tech coming together. To really combat some of the issues that communities are facing every day when it comes to sustainability, resilience, and climate.
Before we go into more of the sort of professional questions, I'm curious a little bit of your background. What was the impetus on you getting into the work that you're doing, if you can share with us
Oh, okay,
briefly?
yeah, good question. So I grew up in a community that's now called Ravendale. Um, it's the Dickerson and Harper area, and I watched my neighborhood shift. I watched it change. I watched just things go from great to good to bad. And for me, I
Can I
wanted to,
jump in within which time frame? Like what's the
this is
what would you
19,
say?
aging myself now.
You don't
No.
have to give us years.
This is like my early childhood. So like I would say the 90s through like yeah, 90s. Yeah, the
Mhm.
90s. Like 10 years, I literally watched things dramatically change from great, good to bad. And
I remember Detroit really well in the 90s.
yeah,
My
and
mom
that's
did
when
too. Hmm.
things really shifted. And my family, we stayed in the city, but I wanted to do something to support Detroit. So I went to Michigan State where I received a urban and regional planning degree, but I also have a minor in environmental sustainability because I know the value of building sustainable environmental communities, environmentally sustainable communities, because um, there's a lot of in my work, I've learned that there's a lot of toxicity in the soils, in the buildings, in the everything in our built environment. And there is you have to be very creative and like use critical thinking skills to find solutions to rid neighborhoods of those toxins. Um, we've had great relationships with like the MEDC to in the city of Detroit to like really make sure that funding is available to detox communities. I think one of the most important factors was any property that's sold through the land bank is considered a brownfield, which gives you access to other resources because um, you just don't know what you're going to find in the soils of these properties, adjacent to gas stations, adjacent to dry cleaners. There's a lot of,
Can you describe quickly what a brownfield is to the audience?
it's a site that is essentially deemed dirty, meaning like there are toxins in the soil that would be harmful to a residential structure. I mean, sometimes you can rebuild or a commercial structure, depending on what it is. You
Mhm.
can rebuild sometimes an industrial site, but typically the state wants that site to be clean before it's reused.
Mhm.
So, for me, so as an urban planner, I just wanted to do better for Detroit. I saw the value. I know the history. My family's been here since the 50s. So it was really important to me that I give back to a city that's given me so much already.
You have the career that to me would be my dream career if I came back in another life. I would have loved to have gone into urban planning now and do a lot of the work that you do. So I'm jealous and excited that you're doing what you're doing. So I think that's probably a good segue to this topic around inclusivity, people and planet, creating growth between people and planet. Um, the idea that with sustainability, it's more than just reducing emissions, you know.
Hmm.
And then when we think of designing spaces and places, like I frequently say, architects and design firms are actually designing our lives, whether we like it or not. And depending on who the developer chooses to be that architect of choice, plus partners, is what actually impacts also the way we live in that space. So it's not just about putting a four-walled structure up, it's what does that do and what does that mean for us as humans, as human beings interacting with that space. So how do you think, when you look at design and sustainability, inclusivity, how do you look at that in terms of people and planet, in terms of environmental goals and where potentially investments should be placed? We touched upon it before, but I'd love to get maybe a little bit more in depth with you.
Yeah, I think that they're essential to Detroiters. I think every Detroit resident should benefit from the environmental goals that we're trying to achieve. But yeah, I think you're right. We don't Detroiters aren't often brought along, and that they we should be a little bit more strategic where we place those investments. Um, you know, one thing I can say that's been done differently lately, um, sort of in my career over the last 12 years, is the, like the planning department, like they're listening a little bit better to the needs of residents. I mean, I would say the level of engagement that I've seen through planning frameworks, whether it's like the Strategic Neighborhood Fund, but especially the Joe Louis Greenway, I think that that is a really incredible place where there was not a prescribed sort of path. I think there was like a path that they knew that the JLG needed to go on, but how they engage residents about what that would look like and feel like and be like for them is really important because it's theirs, right? At the end of the day, like it's their asset. They have to live with that. And I think the city did a really great job of engaging residents and continue to engage residents as that framework was built out and then construction started. And now we have an entity, the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership with Liana Melly over there, who is doing a dynamic job just keeping residents engaged as she continues to program and activate the Joe Louis Greenway. I had a friend recently asked me about my experience at Michigan State's their urban planning program, and I was talking about my study abroad process where I was at the Universität of Dortmund, and we were trying to reprogram or like we had like a practicum essentially where we were trying to figure out how to redesign this harbor in Dortmund, Germany. And all the Americans wanted to build like movie theaters and flashy things, but in reality, the Germans, they had lots of open space, amphitheaters, like the same things that we're beginning to see in Detroit. And I think we have really done a great job of bringing design elements that are not native to America. And Detroiters, it's resonating with Detroiters in a way that will benefit them from a health perspective. At the same time, as we are developing these sort of green spaces and like working towards these green initiatives, jobs are another big play here. I mean, someone has to understand how to build these spaces. And so, the work we're doing with like Greening of Detroit, trying to put canopy back in communities, educate residents on the value of tree canopy, uh, creating tree artisans that can then like check this, right? Like if you go this route of just becoming like a tree artist and you start learning how to manage trees, there's an opportunity where you could probably grow to be a line worker with a power company like DTE, and that's life-changing income for residents in the city. And these are like the small increments that we can make to help grow wealth for Detroiters while also providing like sustainable investments that benefit their communities from like emissions um, and toxins, right? I think that there's a lot of good that's happening with the way that we're designing our spaces now. And that includes like the city itself, right? Like all of these new parks that are being built, they're not just adding playgrounds and tennis courts. They're like adding retention ponds to like ensure that when it rains, that rain does not flood resident like neighborhoods. Because you got to remember, all of that, all of that sewage and you know runoff is it's not great for the health of any resident. It's creating mold, it's creating additional toxins in their residence. And so like having ways to mitigate that is just going to benefit everyone. So like the city of Detroit has done a really great job of infusing bioretention and like cisterns, things like that in their actual parks to ensure that neighborhoods are we're mitigating the flooding that happens in neighborhoods when we get too much rain. So
Today's podcast is brought to you by Gilbert Family Foundation. Learn more about their work at gilbertfamilyfoundation.org.
Do you feel, just from a human condition standpoint, that people are becoming a lot more aware of the terms and, of course, the need, and they're living it, obviously, too, and that really with climate change, which is, I think, everyone's pretty cognizant that it's happening in front of our eyes, that that they're also asking for these types of modifications without really even maybe knowing what to ask for, but that
hmm.
they're pushing on those in leadership positions to start acting upon change for them so that their lives can be made of higher value the way that they're living, and and that their voices are heard. I'm talking for all of us.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's I say yes because those who are advocating on their behalf are like the organizers, which are the nonprofits, right? I used to be a community organizer for a nonprofit, and one of my role was to make sure that residents were informed about what's affecting them and making sure that they had the knowledge so that they could then could advocate for themselves as well.
Mhm.
And I think in moments where a city, a company, a nonprofit, anyone who's trying to do anything in a community brings a project that has community engagement tied to it, like you always solicit feedback from residents, but you also have to feed them information that they may not have so that they are making the right decisions. Some residents may not know why things are like they may not know that there's like an issue with the pump or there's an issue with just our infrastructure to manage rainfall. Like the more information that they have, the more they can advocate. And so I think some residents are well engaged and have engaged their neighbors to also understand the urgency around infusing these types of investments in projects or in just in the neighborhoods in general. Whereas others are just sort of like having that lived experience, but may not know the why yet. But there are people who are advocating for them. So, I think it's a bit of both. And there's a lot of work to do. It's not to say like everyone knows everything that's happening, but I think there's a greater number of people who are aware of what's happening to them than there were before.
Not to plug both of us shamelessly, I will, because I really do think it's a critical point. I think that the work that Gilbert Family Foundation does quietly, as much as it's known, I think the majority of it is not known, what you're actually investing in and what massive opportunities you are supporting throughout greater Detroit and the city and the region. Um, and I would say, these opportunities to congregate people like we're producing at SUDS, these are chances for conversations like this to really happen and for people to really be a little bit more, I'm using it lightly, educated, but inspired to think about things in a new way, and to realize that, maybe those challenges that I've been facing at my own house and at my own place of business are these, and this could be the trickle up or trickle down effect. So I really do believe that the work that these community organizations are doing, Gilbert Family Foundation is one of the leaders, is critical. And to be able to share voices like yours in the business that you have at Gilbert Family Foundation is just mandatory. I don't think it's a question anymore. Does it need to happen? It needs to happen. The question is when and how,
Yeah.
and and you're doing it. So I think the other thing that I think would be interesting to get into with you is around um, one, you are, let's say, the large support group, financially and strategically, to get things done within the city that you deem are necessary, and others. Then you also need the partners that will do it or follow through, or that you feel are equitable enough to provide the funds for. And third, you need the community engagement in order to let everybody know what's being done is being done. So talk to me a little bit about the partnerships and the neighborhood engagement piece of the business that you have.
Yeah. So um, the types of like types of positions like to inspire Detroiters to like be aware of these types of opportunities. I mean, I spoke a little bit to the Green of Detroit partnership that we have, where we are like training those tree artisans and folks to like understand landscaping and tree management in neighborhoods. There's also a component in there that like has a youth engagement piece.
Mhm.
We were talking a lot with Liana at the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership about how do we engage more young people into to better understand that climate is it's an important factor in their lives. So there's like programming happening at the youth level, but I also think about when I think about sustainability. I mean, I think about food, right? Food is a big piece of this too. And, we recently announced our investment with Eastern Market and their Shed 7 to help more farmers, right? Like that's a really important place um, to focus on too, because if we can start to insulate our food supply chain and also promote more jobs that are being created in both like logistics, storage, delivery, like it's it's one of those um, indirect sort of impacts that you have on people when they uh, don't necessarily know how it's all connected, but like a part of the solution. And then as they are in it, they learn more about how they're connected to the solution. So from an inspiration component, I think as we continue to layer in more green tech, more green jobs, we are supporting more Detroiters. But of course, none of this is done without partners. We don't do anything by ourselves. I mean, it's rare to see us act alone with anything that we do. I would say 99.99998% of the time, we are partnering with someone who is either an expert or well equipped to take on an initiative. And so we work closely with nonprofits. We listen to the nonprofits. We attend, like as a foundation, we attend some of our partners' community meetings just to listen and be a part of those conversations and to make better decisions, make better strategic decisions. Um, a lot of the work that we do is with like partners like the city of Detroit, helping them to understand the value of making these like infrastructure improvements in neighborhoods so that residents are not experiencing, you know, issues with their homes or their communities when it comes to weather or climate. So for us, it's all about the partnership. I mean, period. Like we can't do anything without partnership.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand, and we feel the same, but really the work that you're doing is so impactful. And for those that sort of fight a capitalist system, it goes to prove that you can't get much done without funding. I mean, you can dream a great dream, but to not have the proper funding behind things that are strategic and well thought through, this is, again, I think that this is where so much of the um, vision you're allowing to come to life is so real. And this is also why I'm so excited that we're working together. I'm talking as organizations. These are not plugs. I really genuinely mean it. I think that what you're doing is so huge, and the opportunity to put dollars where they matter is key.
Uh,
Uh, and then also, like back with Easter Market, people like to feel good and they like good food, and they might not even realize, we might not realize, that the more veggies and fruits we put in our bodies, the better we're going to feel. And that has a whole circular economic trickle up and trickle down effect. And again, you're facilitating just general well-being and health just at a base level, let
yeah.
alone, supplying opportunities for business. One of the things that we do at SUDS that we really feel strongly about are other cities' partnerships and countries. So we've had international partners since day one. We're now in our fourth year. We've worked with the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. This year, we are partnered up with the Consul General of Italy. We're
Mm.
speaking with other international countries and also cities to align them with Detroit. I know that state of Michigan has a lot of partnerships and opportunities with global partners. So we kind of see that opportunity for conversation and for the discourse to go both handed, both ways, is really key and insightful. So um, the fact that you did study abroad, the fact that we believe that there's also a lot of opportunity to learn from other cities and examples to follow. Do you think that there's something that would be a good lesson that Detroit could consider that is either global or national or regional that would be great? I don't know, maybe things like environmental interventions or economic support systems that you think would be good examples to share that you have followed that you like,
From
that
other
you think
countries.
work. Well, other countries or other cities or outside of Detroit, some great examples on a civic base that you think work sustainably.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit does it best, no matter what.
We know that.
I mean, I say that jokingly, but also we have spent a lot of time traveling around the country. We've been to Boston, we've been to Houston, we've been to Atlanta, we've been to Chicago. Like we've been everywhere to understand like what are the right tools to do some of this work. And yeah, there are places like Atlanta, hands down, they are killing it from a climate resilience perspective, but they also have the topography to do it. They have
Yeah,
we're a pretty flat city, so
yeah,
our solutions are a little bit different,
right.
but it's still a great opportunity to visit places like that. I think Minneapolis does a great job of how they program their public spaces as well. But I think the one thing that Detroit has already learned from other cities is that we have to leverage our vacant land. Like
Hmm.
that's an asset that a lot of cities wish they had the advantage of,
Hmm.
controlling, but we do. And I think about places like Atlanta who have the Atlanta Beltline, and they did not secure enough of their the land around their belt line, and Detroit saw the sort of economic boom that occurred in Atlanta, but also the significant displacement that occurred because of it.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the biggest lesson learned is like Detroit has one of the greatest assets. Like there's no more land being produced, and the city and residents have a voice in what happens next related to its infrastructure, its food systems, and even tree canopy, like and even things like solar, right? We have seen Detroit really work to insulate its its power grid just for or municipal buildings by building solar farms in communities and making sure that there's a shared equity play. That's the other thing that we learned from other cities is that there was not as much engagement happening at the community level, and a lot of projects were not being bought into the way that they are in Detroit because Detroiters are adding, sorry, city partners, corporations to the best of their ability are incorporating engagement and like making sure that resident voice is like lifted before
Hmm.
decisions are made. So, and we also learned from other cities that private philanthropic and public partnerships are really essential to get on the same page about a problem and maximize the impact of leverage to make sure that what the need is can be met. Um, Too often, I think we were really acting in silos trying to get things done, but now I feel like there's a really sort of concerted effort to have everyone work together to achieve the same outcome, which is really important.
I'll say that whenever we have had architects and architecture firms that are out of Detroit come to Detroit, the first thing that they say is, "Oh my God, the land you have, what we could do with this if we had got our hands on it." So it's like a dreamscape to most planners and most architects and most firms. I completely can see that. Um, I think also, what you're saying, Detroit's learned so many lessons and it's picked up so much information over the last few years, in particular, the last 15, let alone the last even 5 post-COVID now, that we're really placing ourselves as a leading footprint on a national and international scale for what can be done, almost flat lines and starting, from a really interesting position, not from scratch, but from a really interesting position of desire, of opportunity,
Right.
of these green screens, so that you can really start fresh with looking at the needs and also looking at the opportunities. One thing that we're going to do this year that I wanted to comment on, speaking sort of, let's say, historically, or I'm thinking now historically at SUDS, is we're introducing a historical context to land use and urbanization of space, and what does that look like for different communities and different groups within the city. I think that will probably be a first as a conversation point. We're interjecting that throughout the day. So I'd be really curious to hear, maybe post this conversation, what your thoughts are also on the historical relevance of the incredible land and use of land and community impacts. Because, why start from scratch when you can have the sort of green screen, but with an addition of new ideas that are added to things that have already worked in the past, starting with the
Yeah,
people mover and moving on, right?
that's right. That's right.
So this is amazing. I think I'm thrilled that you are able to take the time to speak with us, because it inspires me and it educates me on points that I need to and want to learn more about, especially as we start moving closer and closer to SUDS in November. Um, Again, you have my dream job, so
Come hang out with me. You can hang out with me, I promise.
anytime. You don't have to tell me twice.
Some days are harder than
Anytime.
others. Most days are harder than others.
I will be your tag along, your shadow, whatever you need help with. I'm there. So tell us, how can people, if they want to hear more about this or get involved, or any links that you think, or sites that you think we should send them to, and we'll put all this down in the show notes. Where do you think that they should go to find out about the work that you've done and other partnerships and organizations that you support?
Yeah, if folks want to stay connected, I would say look for organizations like the Greening of Detroit, Keep Growing Detroit, the Detroit Parks Coalition. Um, Follow us on on all socials, LinkedIn, Gilbert Family Foundation, uh, Instagram. I don't know if we think of a TikTok now. Um, and Facebook, of course. And I would also say for folks who are just living in communities where things are happening, like just try to stay engaged in the planning process of your community. Take a look at the city's website, look at the planning department's website, see if there are things happening in your neighborhood. Follow the Joe Louis Greenway partnership just to
Mhm.
stay connected. That is a huge project because it is a 27.5 mile recreational trail that goes through many neighborhoods and goes
Yeah.
to 4 different cities. So it's going to impact a lot of residents. So stay connected there. And then, I don't know, do something fun. Like when I was, before I moved into a townhome, I had a single family home, and I would be engaged with like the Sierra Club and have my rain barrels fed from my gutters, things like, things you can do to just contribute to the sustainability efforts. So
Like individual impact, right?
yeah, yeah. Plant a tree, please,
I'm
please.
with you. I'm completely with you. I believe that these are conversations we're having, and I am with you. Plant a tree is exactly the way to go. No matter, where, hopefully it won't, it's in a safe spot, but definitely plant a tree and take
Yeah,
a little one with you so that next generation see what the opportunities are that they can do on their own.
that's right. That's right.
And then can people check you out also on LinkedIn and connect with you if they're interested in connecting with you
Yeah.
specifically and personally?
Yeah, look
Be kind of
LinkedIn,
interesting.
Darnell, I think it's Darnell D. Adams or Darnell Adams. But yeah, just
Cool.
search me in the bar and click add. So yeah,
You got it. And then we'll get together. I will shadow you one day. I'll be
please. No,
your
I really want you
sweeper behind you, whatever you need. I'll
to.
I'll get it done.
All right,
So
perfect.
thanks so much, Darnell, for joining us and for Gilbert Family Foundation for supporting SUDS and for making this great conversation today happen. And I'm looking forward to so many, many, many more and keep our city inspired and sustainable like you are.
Thank you, Ivana. I'm a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Stay engaged with all things Detroit through Detroitisit's socials. We'd love to hear your comments on this and all our podcasts. Today's podcast is brought to you by Gilbert Family Foundation. Learn more about their work at gilbertfamilyfoundation.org.